I survived 100 days as a woman in Bannerlord, and this is what happened. Okay, now that I clickbaited you here, I'm going to be honest. The challenge isn't playing as a lady, because we all know men and women are 100% equal all the time. The real test is making a name for yourself when you have absolutely nothing. No money, no morale, no food, no health, no weapon, and no one to help you. I call this the Rock Bottom Challenge, and it's become a bit of a tradition on the channel, but it has been more than a couple of years since last time I've tried it, so let's see how it goes. Because I don't want to bore you to death by explaining the rules of this challenge, I'll just quickly put them on the screen. Now that you're all caught up, let's begin. Meet Astrid. Her father was a traveling merchant from Britannia who wasn't very wealthy. Due to his cautious nature, he preferred to trade locally instead of taking the risk of transporting his wares to faraway places. Even so, he's done his best to provide for his family, and they never struggled. Until his wife and Astrid's mother has fallen ill, and most of the money had to go to the doctors who attempted to heal her. For a couple of years they've managed to keep her alive, but in the end, it was all in vain. But life must go on, and after Astrid turned 19, she asked her father to sell the little home they had in Marunath, reinvest that money into a new caravan, and take her with him on his journeys. Life on the road can be harsh, however, so this time they would take some risks in order to make money faster and afford a new home someplace else. Upon hearing rumors that the town of Kuyaz was under siege, their caravan bought all the food they could carry and set course over there, planning to pitch camp outside the city walls, wait for the siege to come to an end, and then sell their goods at a premium price. A good plan. Unfortunately, a large coalition of bandits had a plan of their own, which involved ambushing trade convoys on the bridge between the continent and the desert, and their plan worked out much better than ours. All the combatants were put to the sword and everyone else was captured, including Astrid and her father. For about a year, they've been kept as thralls by the largest gang of desert bandits, forced to mine silver in the cave they used as a base of operations. But on one fateful night, Astrid's father overheard the outlaws talk about sending more people on raids, which means fewer guards here. So he seized the opportunity and decided to mine a different type of grey matter. That night he fought like a monster, carving a path through the bandits towards freedom. But the commotion drew the attention of the ringleader and his lieutenants, who intercepted the escapees as they were about to flee. The duo faced a simple choice. They could both fight shoulder to shoulder and most likely lose, or Astrid could run away while her father kept the outlaws at bay. He chose the second option and managed to take down one more bandit before he paid the ultimate price. But his heroism bought his daughter her freedom, and with teary eyes, she made her way to the nearest village to look for help, but to her dismay, the residents called the guards before she even had the chance to speak. She spent such a long time among brigands that the law-abiding citizens of this land now considered her to be one of them, and thought she's drawing them into a trap. She ran as fast as she could, but soon enough, she found herself being chased by the noble who ruled over that village, as well as his entire retinue. Unable to fight an entire army, or outrun them for very long, she had to choose the lesser evil and let herself be captured by the nearest band of looters. No idea what the nobility has in store for her now that she's an outlaw. Bandits, at the very least, would keep her alive. Not long after, she managed to make her escape once more, this time with the knowledge that the lawful world has forsaken her and she is on her own. And this is where Astrid's story begins. Let's see what the next 100 days have in store for her. Will she remain a slave to the bandits who roam these lands? Get caught by the local law enforcement? Or will she claw her way out of this? First, let's make an assessment of what we have. Nothing. Not even some rags to cover ourselves with. All we've got is the will to survive and thrive in a world that hates us, precious. In order for Astrid to get out of this, however, she needs the strength to put up a fight, which is difficult when you have no food in your belly. But there are solutions to everything. She could, theoretically, beat some outlaws and take their supplies, or she could go to a freshly raided settlement with no defenders and steal their butter, or travel to the bandit hideout she spotted earlier and sneak around, gorging on whatever crumbs she can find. On her way there, however, she got caught by a group of 7 bandits who wanted to talk about the weather.
A hot day, is it not?
The conversation was rather dull and bored Astrid out of her mind, but at least the fellas were nice enough to keep her fed, if only barely. After a couple of days, Astrid saw an opportunity to escape the conversation and then resumed her journey towards the nearby hideout, where the only thing she could do was wait and try to keep herself in a stable condition. During the day, when the brigands were busy with their routines, she could sneak around their camp and snack on whatever leftovers she found at their tables, but at night, she had to be cautious. But not like her father. Maybe if he took some risks, he could have afforded better doctors and her mother would still be alive. With this lingering thought, on the second night of waiting she went to scout the hideout and see if the residents are easy prey. Turns out they're not. Worse yet, if she were to be cut down by the Yatagans, that would be the end of her story, so she's done the smart thing and disappeared into the night. The next evening, however, because she was feeling 100% ready for a fight, Lady Hagal decided to visit the residents of this hideout yet again. Against untrained Bedouins, she's got a tiny chance of success. Not against 2 of them at a time though, at least not now, so she sought out a rover that's all alone, and when he found her, she attempted to punch and kick him while at the same time narrowly dodging the swings of his mace. Unburdened by earthly possessions, she could slightly outrun the villain, which gave her a negligible advantage in this fight. But she hits like a girl, so she needed to give the guy at least 30 bruises before he went down. And if she got bludgeoned a couple of times, it would be over for her. And that did happen eventually, but through sheer force of will, she was still standing, and after 2 minutes of intense fighting, she's defeated her first foe and took his mace. Armed and dangerous, Astrid went to fight the other 2 who were chilling by the campfire. She attempted to take them by surprise, but that didn't work. Still, the first one fell pretty easily and the second was defeated with a combination of kicks to the ribcage and bonks to the head. The speed of being unburdened means a lot more when you also have a weapon. Against the 4th Bedouin, she's decided to employ the same hit-and-run tactic that helped her prevail against the first 3, but her luck ran out when she got a bit too close for comfort. Fortunately, the blunt weapon only incapacitated her and she's still alive. Before the scum did anything else to her, our hero regained consciousness and managed to flee, though she's back to square one. With nothing better to do, Astrid resumed her routine of hanging around the hideout and feeding on scraps for a couple more days. She would have liked to do that for longer, but a wandering gang snatched her in the middle of the night and dragged her around for some time. Many days later, she broke free once more, but instead of returning to her usual place, she's decided to venture forth to another hideout she knew about from her recent past. New place, new opportunities. Before reaching her destination, another band of sand people intercepted Astrid and took her along to show her the local attractions. Sand, and more sand. I hate sand. It's coarse, it's rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere. As she was being given the local tour, she noticed a lone Bedouin roaming the desert, dragging 2 prisoners with him. If she could have a chat with him, maybe she could get some food and even make a new friend. Eventually, she caught up and the man was instantly struck by this divinely beautiful girl who wanted to befriend him.
A hot day, is it not?
How could he say no? Now he had 3 friends with him. But like any man, he tried to escape the friend zone, which drove Astrid away. Rookie mistake, you don't escape the friend zone. But when she realized she still needed food as well as other things, She ran back after the guy and challenged him to fisticuffs. She's already proven she has a mean right hook. This fight wasn't too different from the first bare-knuckle brawl you witnessed, except this time, the Bedouin doesn't have anyone around to help him. 1v1, a fair fight. I mean, sure, he's armed and she's not, but his mallet isn't long enough to sweep a lady off her feet. With a bit of caution and a lot of patience, she can dodge his swings, kick him in the nuts and punch his teeth out. Confident after her foray into that hideout, Astrid was a lot more aggressive this time around, using new combat techniques. Uppercuts in the ribs and the liver and the spleen, baiting and counterattacking, as well as relying on already proven techniques, such as proper spacing with the kicks or punches in the mouth. Because she was using a hit-and-run fighting style, her opponent called her... You coward! But that doesn't make any sense? An armed man fighting a naked and unarmed woman? Who's the real coward? There were a few close calls here and there, but after about 3 minutes of running, kicking and slapping, Astrid emerged victorious at last. Her first priority was to free the Aserai peasants that the bandit planned to sell into slavery and ask them for their names. Hassan and Yusuf. Nice to meet you, boys. She then captured the outlaw, telling him, I won you fair and square. Seeing this as an opportunity to escape the friend zone, the lad nodded in agreement, but when Astrid returned for the loot, most of it was gone, buried under the sand that was blown around by the desert winds. I hate sand. All she managed to recover was 25 dinars, a robe and a sack of grain. At least she's clothed and won't be starving anytime soon, but she has 4 mouths to feed, so that grain will only last us for a week at most. But that was the first of many steps our heroine needed to take in order to make her way in a man's world. The next step was traveling to the horse ranch of Malul, in hopes that the peasants she rescued would explain to the locals that she's not a criminal. But before talking to the militia, the duo confessed to her that they actually stole some stallions from here and sold them to the desert bandits. In spite of that, they still got kidnapped, so I guess that honor among thieves is only a myth. As long as we didn't get too close to anyone, the authorities would leave us alone, and most outlaws wouldn't dare come this close to a settlement. Never mind. These 7 actually had the guts to start a fight right here in the village. The residents weren't in any danger, as this wasn't a direct attack on them. So everybody went inside their homes and waited for all this to blow over. Not even the militia intervened, I mean, why would they? As far as they were concerned, this gang dispute was beneath their pay grade. 7 trained killers versus 2 civilians led by an unarmed and inexperienced girl. Who would win? Let's analyze the battlefield. Their side has 4 horsemen, one of whom is equipped with javelins, and 3 footmen armed with maces and spears. Our side has 2 peasants with farming tools, and a lady who's armed with 2 good old-fashioned fists, as well as a brain that could prove to be the deadliest weapon yet. Since the cavalry is the greatest threat, let's render them useless by using geometry to our advantage, making it impossible for them to get to us. They could dismount, of course, but once a Bedouin obtains a horse, he considers it a great shame to climb out of the saddle. Once we were on the rooftop of one of the houses here, all we needed to do was dodge the missiles and wait for the footmen to climb to us.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
Before the walkers arrived, Astrid picked up the javelins that landed on the roof and prepared to use them in the upcoming melee, so as not to be entirely useless. In the meantime, she kept baiting the Harami to keep sending her ammo, but before long, the sound of fighting snapped her out of that little dance. Without hesitation, she drove her spear into the face of a rover, killing him instantly, and stabbed another in the back 3 times before he succumbed to his wounds. Her 2 friends took care of the third one, but we were still being hunted by 4 mountain bandits. And we couldn't stay on this rooftop forever. We needed to confront them even though they were extremely dangerous. The most important thing was waiting for the Harami to run out of javelins and pick them up, if possible. Well, that one requires a ladder. After formulating a plan, we decided to stay right on top of the stairs and wait for our enemies to get stuck in the local architecture, so that we can more easily pepper them with stones and thrown spears. That's how the first nomad fell, and Astrid did not hesitate to pick up his lance, after which she attempted to shoot another one off his horse, but she missed, and needed to run to the javelin and pick it back up, which made her vulnerable. Don't worry, she made it back to the stairs, and after being stuck in a stalemate for a few minutes, 2 of the raiders' horses got stuck in a fence, which made them easy targets. So she returned the javelins to their rightful owner and stabbed the nomad with his brother's spear. But there's still one other rider roaming around, and if our fair maiden gets punctured, that's the end for her. In order to stack the odds in her favor, she picked up the Harami's shield and then mentally prepared to confront her final foe. In the last few seconds of this fight, she ordered her dear friends to form a human wall in front of her, while she grabbed her spear with confidence as the enemy stampeded towards her.
Hey, you! You're finally awake.
Wait, we won? We actually did. I thought Astrid died there, but it seems the nomad wasted his stab on Yusuf and didn't have time to ready another attack. She only got slightly trampled by the horse, while the raider impaled himself on her braced spear. Nice! Unfortunately for the outlaws, there were no survivors we could turn to our side, and unfortunately for us, the villagers didn't allow us to take any weapons, horses, or food from the bandits we've defeated. On that condition, they allowed us to walk away. All we managed to get was about 150 gold, a padded armor, shoes, a turban, and a shield, among some garbage that we'd sell for another 65 dinars right here in the village. It is disappointing for Astrid to still be unarmed, dismounted, and on the verge of starvation after such a great victory, but at least it inspired confidence in her new friends. The bruised Bedouin also joined our little group after such a display of cunning. Said his name's Karim, and he's never witnessed such savagery in his entire career, and from a woman no less. Looks like Astrid's earned her #1 fan. After this, we attempted to pick some easier fights, since our food situation was getting desperate, and just as we were about to run out, we encountered a group of 6 brigands with the same troop composition as before. Our tactics needed to be different, however, since we were in the open desert and didn't have any geometry to rely on. In the first few seconds of this fight, I gave my boys the order to go after the enemy cavalry, picked up a javelin and watched the Bedouin rover trip on his shoelaces. The fact I'm missing a javelin has nothing to do with it. I then spent some time being chased by the other 2 until I called the lads to me, which gave me some breathing room and allowed me to make another bandit trip and fall, after which all we needed to do was deal with the horsemen. So I ran around, collected a mace and 3 more javelins, and used one of them to set this sinner free. After picking up his spear, I was able to stop a rider dead in his tracks and heavily injured him, but he managed to ride away and prepare for another charge. What is a nomad's greatest strength? His mount. After all, horses are faster than men, but at the same time, horses are dumber than men. Unfortunately for Yusuf, as we focused on killing one of the riders, the other one murdered our dear friend. A life for a life. As the nomad charged towards us for the final time, I downed his horse with a javelin to the head and then smacked him with my mace. To pay for his crime against Yusuf, he would take his place in our crew, eventually. As a reward for winning the fight, I got 130 gold, my first weapon, a master-crafted mace, a bunch of random loot that will be sold in a village, and some cheese that would keep us fed for the next 6 days. I sure hope we'll find more sustenance before our cheese runs out. As we were roaming the desert looking for nutrients, we ran into a group of 3 Bedouin rovers who recklessly attacked us even though we were a bit stronger.
A hot day, is it not?
This brawl was rather straightforward. Because our enemies were armed with blunt weapons, none of us risked our lives, so I told my 2 buddies to fight without fear, and within 30 seconds, we were victorious. But when I asked the survivors why they didn't just run away, even though they could have, they said they were starving and hoped that we had some snacks they could borrow. Feeling merciful, Astrid took the thieves under her wing as prisoners, and continued hunting for a gang that had enough food for everyone in her crew. Eventually our search brought us back to the village of Malul, where we sold our stolen equipment and attempted to just buy some provisions, but the village elder told us that he must take everything into the city and doesn't have any to spare for us. I know he's lying and I would take it by force, but the 3 of us can't deal with the local militia, so we resigned to just roam the desert until we find someone we can steal from. After dodging some gangs we couldn't fight, we eventually encountered a small crew comprised of a rider and 4 footmen.
Hello, traveler. Hope you brought your purse.
The infantry was pretty easy to deal with. I hit them from behind while they were busy fighting my 3 lads. They must have not thought me capable of inflicting damage and were probably expecting to get a relaxing massage instead. Well, they're sleeping now, so maybe they were right. But the horseman killed one of the rovers that recently joined up and proceeded to ride around, taking jabs at us. Because he wasn't very good at using the spear, Hassan perished as well, and while Astrid grieved for him, she had to pick up his weapon and put it to good use. And so she did, and when the nomad was dismounted, she bludgeoned him into a coma. And while she mourned the loss of her dear friend, Astrid realized that the world is a cruel place, and if she wanted to survive, she needed trained killers in her crew. So she captured the nomad, planning to turn him to her side, but left his 4 friends behind, because she couldn't afford to keep them fed. As for the loot, we found a cracked spear and a bit of meat that would keep us alive for a few more days. In order to stretch our already limited supplies, we had to abandon 2 of the Bedouin rovers we captured earlier. This gained us 3 extra days until we ran out of food, and at this point, there were only 4 of us. Our girl, her number 1 fan, and a couple of captive nomads. After Karim told them how Astrid beat someone with her bare hands, neglecting to mention the small detail that the someone was himself, as well as describing her other exploits in great detail, Yusuf's killer decided to join our crew, said his name was John. Not from around here, I guess, but then again, not all desert bandits are locals. I mean, look at Astrid. To our surprise, John possessed the ability to call a horse to him with a special whistling technique, which he refused to share with us. Trade secret, he said. Alright then. As soon as he did that, our traveling speed increased significantly because he had Astrid climb on the horse with him, which forced the other 2 to start running behind us. With this speed advantage, we were now able to outrun almost anyone and pick our fights. The lady would have preferred to find her own mount, but this is acceptable too. After about a day of roaming around, we found our next victims. A couple of Bedouin rovers. Thanks to our newfound speed, we were able to drive them away from the larger gangs that protected them, isolate them, and then put them to the sword. In the interest of maintaining our traveling speed, we refused to take the peasant we've rescued into our gang, and to our pleasant surprise, we managed to obtain some butter. Delicious. Finally, some damn good food. And while we had enough provisions to last us for 16 days, when Astrid noticed a group of travelers with 7 footmen and a single rider, she knew their easy prey. Before they reached us, she ordered John to dismount, borrowed his horse, and gave her friends the order to retreat because she knew how to handle all the enemies on her own. Her first priority was to incapacitate the nomad because we need horsemen in our gang, but due to the risky nature of this job, she got cut a little. Luckily, the padded armor saved her life and she managed to knock the nomad off his horse. As for the footmen, they stupidly clumped together and attempted to stab her with their spears, but they mostly got in each other's way, which allowed Astrid to easily ride around them and stab them in the head from the comfort of her saddle. She still needed to be careful though, because one wrong move is all it takes for her to bite the dust, but after 2 minutes, all but one Bedouin became food for the vultures. She gave the last man the chance to duel her, but he was weak, not fit to join her crew. Up to this point, John only heard stories of his leader's abilities, but now that he's seen it with his own 2 eyes, he's starting to believe in her. The loot was nearly worthless, but at least we kidnapped another rider to add to the family. On day 25, that lad decided to join our crew after hearing Karim and John talk about the great deeds of their future queen. And now we were much faster since we had 4 people riding on 2 horses. A couple of days later, the final prisoner joined up as well, and now there were 5 of us, ready to establish ourselves as the fiercest gang in the desert. And since we were a lot stronger, we decided to challenge a slightly larger tribe to a little wager. A fight to the death, winner takes all. My tactic was to dismount my horsemen because they're a lot deadlier on foot, especially against enemy riders. Unfortunately, the newest member of our gang failed to use his spear correctly and paid with his life. As for myself, I mounted up and went after the enemy cavalry since they're our most dangerous foes. Little did I know that I was already left all alone because I overestimated the capabilities of my own men. Well, this wouldn't be the first time Astrid handles a gang all on her own. Thanks to her dexterity, she managed to hit one of the nomads in the shoulder, giving him a nasty wound, and stabbing the other one in the heart. As for the walkers, you already know how easy they are to deal with, especially because of Astrid's foresight to pick up the spear dropped by her fallen companion, which is a lot better than the one she had equipped. Unfortunately, in addition to our newest recruit, Astrid lost her #1 fan as well. Rest in peace, Karim. Thankfully, John and one other were still breathing and they have their lady to thank for it. This is the second time she's killed a gang all on her own. First time could have been luck, but now, John's faith in his fierce leader was unquestioning. The sacrifice of her men earned Astrid a masterwork spear and a bit of extra butter, and she also saved 6 peasants from imprisonment who have all chosen to pay their life debt in her service. Out of curiosity, we put these lads to the test against a gang of 11 bandits and they handled themselves wonderfully. We didn't lose a single one. The loot was also quite nice, 250 gold and some date fruits in addition to some stuff we could sell. Not that money matters too much. We can't buy anything from anyone, but my men demand their daily wages and if we run out of cash, the gang dissolves. But we couldn't keep scraping the bottom of the barrel. We wanted bigger scores and for that, we needed a stronger crew. When we saw another posse of 11 outlaws wandering around, we challenged them to a fight. The only thing I've done differently this time around was try my best to capture their leader instead of killing him. The Harami is one of the greatest soldiers the desert has to offer, and after some heavy fighting, I managed to kill his horse and knock him on his ass as he attempted to chase my allies. The plunder was pretty damn good as well, as it contained enough foodstuffs to allow us to enjoy a more varied diet. But this victory gave us a mild case of suffering from success because we now had so much stuff we had trouble carrying it around. The speed penalty wasn't too severe, but we needed to unburden ourselves before getting caught by someone we couldn't fight. After we liquidated our assets, we spent 4 more days exploring the desert while waiting for the Harami to join us, but at some point, 2 marauding tribes ganged up on us.
A hot day, is it not?
The fight lasted for almost 8 minutes and we lost one of our nomads, but the rest of the men were ordered to GTFO while Astrid dealt with this mess on her own. You've already seen her annihilate entire groups from horseback, so this wasn't too different, except for the fact that she's done her best to save their leader for last. As the broken bodies of her enemies lied scattered on the battlefield, our heroine descended from the saddle, readied her mace and challenged the sinner to single combat. The opponents exchanged blows until their shields shattered and the duel continued long after, with none being able to gain the upper hand as they masterfully parried each other's strikes. Until Astrid decided to abandon defense altogether and landed a hit on her opponent as he was in the middle of his swing. Turns out her mace is a lot faster, and once she capitalized on her only advantage, the Harami was humbled. Another fine addition to our clan once his wounds, and most importantly, his pride, have healed up. And while John's faith was already unquestioning, this display of might only served to strengthen his devotion and spread it among the troops like wildfire. As the men were recalled to help loot the battlefield, they were surprised to find a couple of tame horses grazing on the blood-stained grass. Must have belonged to the two nomads Astrid killed.
Finally! No more walking!
But now we had a lot of loot for sale, and after we visited a couple of nearby villages, we reached almost 4,000 dinars. But we also had something we didn't want. Attention from an Aserai lord who developed a crush on Astrid, thinking she can outrun him through here. She chased a small group of looters and killed them all. Unfortunately, the path she imagined was impossible because the terrain was impassable and the only way out of here was blocked by Hakan, who confronted our gang and sentenced us to death.
I would know whom I slay.
10 versus 115. I wonder who would win. Dune Raiders, to glory! Astrid shouted before John, her most loyal companion, ordered the lads to stop and said to her, "My lady, let me lead the troops. You can still escape." The men must have been truly inspired to lay down their lives for a woman they've only met a few weeks ago, but when you're faced with certain death, the best you can hope for is that your story will live on. With religious fervor, Astrid's cult charged towards their doom in order to distract the Aserai patrol and allow her to walk away unscathed. Looks like the myth of honor among thieves is true after all. But allowing her soldiers to pay for her tactical errors had unintended consequences. Hakan noticed she wasn't among the dead and began spreading rumors about her cowardice. That's not ideal, but as long as she's alive, she can always rebuild her reputation and enact revenge upon the Lordling for the murder of John and her apostles. All was not lost, however. On the horses' saddlebags we still had a few snacks, and we were dragging along a couple of Harami prisoners who've witnessed Astrid's fierceness firsthand and understood why she had to flee that battle. As outlaws, they're grateful she did it, because otherwise the Aserai would have put their heads on spikes as well. But I hear you thinking to yourself, who's we? Astrid's on her own. Well, I am, of course, her battle instinct. That's why it sounds like a male voice. Women weren't bred for battle, so when they have to adapt, they adopt masculine features. Moving on isn't something we can do very quickly. We're still disorganized after that defeat, and since we were burdened by sorrow, a band of 5 looters caught up and demanded we pay for safe passage.
There's a tax for passage in these parts, traveler.
Gold is rare these days, so I paid in iron instead. In return, the looters were kind enough to offer me a barrel of date fruits, but I was already lugging around more than I could carry and couldn't afford additional weight. I then made my way into the deep desert, to the hideout, which was a safe haven during my first few days here. I was planning to clear the place out, but I couldn't do it alone, so I waited for about 3 days until both sinners decided to join me. With their help, taking over this gang is a lot more feasible. At first glance, you'd believe that the bandits' numeric superiority renders them automatically victorious. However, despite being outnumbered, the 3 of us stuck together, whereas the Bedouins are spread thin all throughout their base of operations. When I spotted my first enemy, I attempted to sneak up to him and land a cheap shot, but he passed the perception check and denied me that little pleasure. Still, I did manage to bludgeon him once and then tricked him into chasing me to my 2 friends, who finished the job. And that's what I tried to do every time I spotted hostile life signs. Land a hit if I can, get the kill if I'm lucky, and if I can't, simply draw them into the trap my haramis prepared. And since my lads are equipped with ranged weapons, I give them the freedom to fire at will, and if they missed, I'd simply pick up the projectiles myself. Could prove useful. With this stratagem in place, I advanced throughout the hideout, attempting to rack up as many kills as possible, but I got careless at some point and earned a bit of head trauma, which decreased my efficiency for the rest of the fight. Humbled by that experience, I decided to stop taking unnecessary risks and just stick to the plan, which worked out much better for us. And whenever we were faced with multiple foes, I would use the Jereeds to reduce their numbers and stack the odds in our favor, but I took care to keep some projectiles for the final confrontation. After the bulk of the bandits were killed or wounded, their boss came out of hiding and challenged me to a duel. I wasn't entirely sure I was a match for him because both my gear and my skills leave a lot to be desired, but I do have two things he does not: javelins and cunning. As soon as the duel began, I started running away and then threw a spear at him, which he blocked with his shield, as expected. Same with the second throw, but the third one broke his bulwark and I still had 4 missiles to spare. He was still standing after the first javelin hit him in the chest and he locked out when I missed my next shot. I nearly got sliced there, but when I landed my next hit, the ringleader was neutralized. Still alive though, thanks to the serious armor he was wearing. Victorious at last, I went to his lads, who watched our fight with great interest and told them,
Oi! You boys follow me, or I'll give you a thump!
They were reluctant to join me, so they came as prisoners at first, but they'll soon realize that they don't need a leader who can win a fair fight through sheer strength, but one who is willing to fight dirty, because that's who will ensure them many victories. The manpower is just part of the reward, however. The resources are equally important, and this hideout had a few nice things lying around. 400 golds, an unsightly helmet to protect the noggin, a bunch of food and a lot of equipment that would fetch a small fortune. After I sold the spoils of war to the village of Walters, I had a devious idea. What if I ambush these peasants as they attempt to sell their goods to the market? So I waited a little, and when they left, me and my 2 haramis went after them. When we caught up, we inquired about their transport, and as expected, in addition to their produce, they were also carrying all the loot I gave them, and they kindly offered to sell it to me at a discount. So now they're willing to trade when they know their lives are at stake. Thanks, but I'll just take it for free. 3 riders versus 16 peasants. I'd say our odds of success are pretty good, so I told my lads to hold fire and close in, and when they did, they launched their Jereeds upon our victims. All of them missed, of course, at which point I just ordered them to attack at will, knowing their tendency to use cycle charges whereas they run at the enemy, strike, run away, and then do it again. In the meantime, Astrid just circled around the villagers, taking jabs at them, but this wasn't as easy as it sounds, because the peasants peppered her with pebbles, and while that sounds harmless, there's a high chance for the lady to get knocked unconscious and our attack to be repelled. But Astrid's shield was painted with the Hagal rune and proved itself adequate defense against the hail of stones that poured down on her. And whenever there was a break in the hailstorm, she seized every opportunity to strike down the villagers from her high horse. The attack was brutal, and in just a couple of minutes, all the peasants laid dead, except for the last one who refused to relent. I gave him the honor of a duel, and he stood his ground valiantly until one of my haramis got bored and stabbed him in the back. I guess there's no turning back now. Up to this point, Astrid was doing whatever she needed to do in order to survive, and the only people she's hurt were other bandits. Now, she's fully embraced the role forced upon her by this world, a criminal. Let's hope she's better at it than she was at being a merchant's apprentice. And it would seem that crime does pay. Because of this attack, we've stolen a bit of food, a portion of the equipment I sold to the village, and most importantly, a workhorse that allows us to carry a lot more plunder. We were still over-encumbered, but a nearby settlement allowed us to unburden ourselves and get richer in the process. Slowly but surely, Astrid's financial situation is improving as she's already got 5,550 gold in her coin purse. If she found more people, she could afford to scale her operations, so now all we needed to do was wait for the outlaws we captured to swear fealty to their new queen. But we've had enough of the desert, so it was time we moved on to Greener Pastures. On the dawn of day 40, we've already reached the border of the Southern Empire, and it was time to meet the local wildlife. Forest bandits. Different animals from those found in the desert. Just as poorly armored, but a lot deadlier due to their proficiency with the bow and arrow. My cavalry had to adapt to the new situation, put their javelins away, raise their shields high, and charge forth with all their might. One arrow is all it takes to bring Astrid's reign of terror to an end, so as you can imagine, she put a lot more emphasis on defense than offense. Still, within a minute, the foresters were defeated, all of them slain by our hero. I would say that my men were useless, but at the very least, they gave our foes someone else to shoot at while she stabbed them with the spear. After looting some arrows, I got an idea. Why don't we try finding a bow? That way, I can defeat entire groups of villagers all by myself, without putting the lives of my men at stake. With this fresh goal in mind, we spent the next few days hunting down all the forest bandits we could find, but after annihilating 3 entire groups, all I found was a scimitar. Still, that's a decent weapon. I mean, I love the mace, but its limited reach makes it difficult to hit anything from horseback. A sword is much better in that regard. After a few more attempts, I eventually gave up trying to find a bow in here and set course towards the steppe, because that place is renowned for its horse archers. Maybe they'll have some fun toys they're willing to share. In the meantime, a couple of desert riders joined the crew, and now there were 5 of us. On the evening of day 45, we eventually found another gang of 5 riders, steppe bandits. We should be able to deal with them if we catch up. The bastards are fast. The chase took us several days, but thanks to my unnatural ability to navigate dark places, I managed to catch them as they entered a forest, and then they died. Well, not all of them, thankfully. One of the marauders got captured, but I lost 2 of my nomads, so overall this wasn't the best trade deal. But I have to share details about this battle after all. It's the first time we encounter the Step Brothers. At first contact, I poked a marauder with my spear, then prodded him with my sword, and then switched to my mace in an attempt to capture him. After 4 hopeless swings, one of my men stabbed him without mercy. A shame. He would have made a fine addition to our gang. I then attempted to wound another one with the spear, but I missed his shoulder and ventilated his skull instead. Seeing how lethal I can be without meaning to, I resorted to using only the mallet and eventually managed to injure one of the skirmishers, but the last one got sliced up before I could get to him. After mourning the fallen and claiming the loot, I explored the area, looking for more gangs we could subdue because I could use horse archers in my crew. A few days later, me and my 3 haramis were caught by 7 steppe bandits, which we repelled with relative ease. We actually managed to injure 4 of them, and they'll join up with us sooner or later. It took some effort, but I believe it's worth it. I even found a fine steel spear in the loot, which will undoubtedly serve me much better than the one I had equipped. For the following 4 days, we've done nothing but roam around, looking for brigands or peasants to attack. Our search was fruitless, but at least some of the prisoners decided to join up, including the desert boss that survived 2 javelins to the chest. Captivity was boring, and they saw us having too much fun. When there were 6 of us, we've challenged a herd of forest beasts to a fight and finally found my first bow. Unfortunately, due to a skill issue, I can't wield it, and even if I could, longbows can't be used on horseback without years of training, so the search continues. Can you guess what I got after my next fight? You guessed correctly, another longbow. At the very least, I'm grateful we're no longer scraping by, praying for our next meal, and we can instead waste time on such trivialities. We're in a pretty privileged position right now. We got a small gang that can fight other outlaws and even pillage peasants, and we're too fast to be caught by the nobility, as long as I'm careful and don't lead my men into another Hakan incident. But comfort breeds weakness, and up until day 58, we've lived a comfortable life with barely any conflict, even though at this point, there were 10 of us. The men were looking forward to our next operation. When we saw a poorly defended village on the border of the Empire, we decided to make it our next target. So we rode in, fought the local militia, looted the fallen. Astrid upgraded her shield, and then she spotted some clay pots filled with purple and white paint. After all, why not? Why shouldn't she apply a bit of makeup, like all the other pretty girls at court? We then attempted to raid this village, but before we even plundered anything, the local law enforcement arrived and chased us off. Damn their rapid response time. In retrospect, I should have just forced the locals to bring us some supplies, but oh well. At least I have the gift of hindsight. With nothing better to do, we resumed our bandit hunting routine and found an upgrade for Astrid's armor, but before long, we were back to doing nothing, just running around the continent looking for opportunities and twiddling our thumbs in anticipation. But on the morning of day 64, we suddenly came to the realization that we had some problems with our food situation, and shortly after, found the solution. A group of 30 villagers hailing from a nearby wheat farm who were carrying a ton of grain, which would probably keep us fed for months. Poor bastards never stood a chance. My horsemen simply rode up to them and unleashed a hail of projectiles. Most javelins missed their intended targets, but the horse bowmen provided a constant stream of arrows that doomed these unarmored and unshielded peasants to certain death. To make matters worse for them, I ordered the cavalry to go to the right flank, and once they occupied that position, they were told to travel to the left, through the peasants, who were menacingly marching towards my rangers, who could simply move farther away at the first sign of trouble. I then gave my cav the order to move back to the right, sweeping through the villagers once again. Did I do it because it's efficient? Yes, but I mostly did it for my own amusement. But I quickly got bored of that, so I ordered everyone to charge, and the rest of the fight was over in a minute. There were no survivors. If these civilians just gave us their goods, they'd still be alive and we wouldn't have damaged half the stuff during the fighting. Oh well, that's still 10 times more food than I was carrying, so all in all, it was good. In fact, my men were so excited for the goods that they've completely forgotten to strip the dead of their rags and pitchforks, as they usually do. But I didn't need this much grain, so I made my way to a village and sold most of it, along some loot I've stolen from other raids. The locals couldn't afford to purchase all of it, but in an overwhelming display of generosity, I just accepted whatever they could pay. And now that we've improved our food situation, it was time to move on to my next goal, increasing the size of the crew. This area is swarming with hill tribes. Why don't we try recruiting some of them? If they want to live, it's logical that they'll just surrender and join the bigger gang. Well, this trio decided to defy logic and denied my generous offer. And they've also killed one of my marauders, the Insolence. This duo didn't join us either, despite being at a severe disadvantage. Neither did these 4, at least not immediately, nor these 5, although we did rescue an Imperial recruit from them, and the mail mittens I looted made their rejection sting a lot less. Looks like the hill tribes are a lot less logical than I was expecting. To make matters worse, our recruitment attempts were interrupted when an Imperial lady took a special interest in me and my lads and drove us off, but soon enough, I was back to being rejected by the local outlaws. Some of those that survived our attacks did eventually join up, but only after a considerable effort. Before long, we were back in the steppe, planning to raid some hideouts because the criminals don't want to join us without a fight. Astrid isn't persuasive enough for that, yet. And even though we were being pursued by Mesui, the matriarch of a prominent Kuzeid clan, we stopped at the first hideout we found and ambushed the inhabitants in the middle of the night. My men swept across the bandit camp, killing everyone in their path, while I attempted to save some lives with my mace, at least until a few arrows forced me to prioritize my own survival instead. After most of the gang was slaughtered, I was confronted by their chieftain who, unlike the first one I fought, didn't have a shield to protect him from my javelin. 1 hit, 1 kill. That's all it takes to get a bunch of raiders to fall in line. They were even kind enough to donate their belongings to our cause. Equipment, horses, and even a bit of food, to ensure that we have all our nutritional needs met. Everything that a growing gang needs. And since we're extremely efficient, this didn't even slow us down and we could simply walk away from Misui's horde. A couple of days later we were back to raiding peasants, and this time I allowed the hill tribes to prove their worth. If they impress me, they'll be permitted to ride the horses we've claimed in our last incursion. They handled themselves pretty well, and when the dust settled, we claimed half of the iron ore carried by the villagers, but when it was over, I spotted something in the distance. A couple of them managed to make their escape. Can't let that happen. So I gave chase, put them to the sword, and got half of what I earned the first time. Had to squeeze them till the very last drop. A good thing too. That iron fetched 700 gold when sold in the nearby village of Hoka. And when I spotted the peasants from Hoka returning home after a successful trade run, I approached them and they gave me another 700 gold out of the kindness of their own heart. They knew that my band of pilgrims were struggling to make ends meet, and their act of generosity brought our wealth over the threshold of 10,000 gold. A small sum in the grand scheme of things, but considering Astrid's humble beginnings, this is quite an accomplishment. Thank you, villagers of Hoka. May you live long, prosperous lives, so that you may continue to enrich those around you. I then discovered another step bandit hideout, which we assaulted using the same tactics as before, although this time I was a lot more efficient at saving lives, even that of the local leader who took 2 javelins to the chest like a champ. And because our prisoner capacity was getting full, I also enlisted the help of 8 Kuzeits we've rescued from slavery. Well, as soon as my actual soldiers healed up, the rookies were let go because they were dragging us down. Maybe I shouldn't have fired them, but at the time, I really needed all the speed I could muster, and dismounted peasants just slow our pace. I even had a brief run-in with the Sultan himself. Sorry, I couldn't ask him how he's doing. We ran as soon as we spotted his banner, but I hope he's having a great day. But the crew still needed to be expanded, and as I was exploring the steppe, looking for more prospects, I discovered another hideout, and another one, and another one. That's all well and good, but our prisoner capacity is at its limit, so we'll have to wait for some of them to join up before we launch another ambush. While waiting, I've done my usual routine. Roam around, scout for targets, annihilate the occasional gang of looters, fence my spoils to a couple of villages, slaughter a bunch of sheep farmers, extort some local farmhands, and even squeezed the villagers from Shapeshte. They were quite salty about it. And in case you need a refresher, squeezing is a raiding tactic that requires you to immediately stop the attack the moment you break the enemy's morale, let the survivors walk away, loot the battlefield, then intercept those who've escaped and take whatever they managed to steal from you. Of course, squeezing may actually have a happy ending for both parties involved, if the runners agree to return all of your stolen property without another fight. That would be qualified as a successful robbery, but it's rare for it to occur, because it is based on the false premise that dirt scratchers don't actually yearn for the day they ascend to high heavens, leaving this horrible plane of existence forever. Me? I like it here, I'm having too much fun. But to pull my head out of the clouds, Astrid's gang squeezed those peasants precisely 1 year after she was stranded in the desert, all alone, so that's quite the anniversary. As me and the lads were celebrating, one of the raiders we've kidnapped from the steppe decided to join the party and brought the gang to a nice round 20 members. But we still had a lot left to achieve, so I liquidated some of my assets and prepared to leave this portion of the world behind. Next destination, I don't know yet. As far away from here as possible. The Kuzeits are a bunch of weirdos. They put 2 armies together to besiege a nearby castle, and instead of focusing on their war effort, they wasted their time following Astrid around, like they're her biggest fans. Maybe one day, she'll have enough groupies with her to sign the Kuzeits an autograph in blood. As soon as I was rid of them, I picked my next destination, Battania. my former home. Along the way, we outran Imperial patrols, considered battling a mercenary, attempted to recruit more bandits, and even managed to assault some peasants, which greatly improved our food stocks. After selling a few things into the village of Ismelkorg, we got ready to pillage, but when the militia gathered up and calmly told us no, we wisely agreed and chose another target, the Battanian village of Seordas, a stone's throw away. I commend the defenders for their bravery. Unfortunately for them, they didn't even give us a scratch. Scratch that, I did get injured a little, but there were no casualties among us. As we were plundering the village, my scout informed me that an Imperial banner is approaching, so we made ourselves scarce until the threat was gone and then went back to work. Arion wasn't there for Astrid, but since she was in his way, he was tempted to make her acquaintance. It's not every day you meet such a beautiful girl. The pillaging continued for the entire evening, but as dawn broke, my scout told me that Arion's party is engaged in battle with a mercenary who is surprisingly not hostile towards my organization. Sensing an opportunity to get a little payback against the nobility who runs this world, and think themselves untouchable surrounded by their elite troops, I rode to the help of that mercenary as fast as I could and ordered my men to attack. But carefully, I want them to kill for me, not die for me. As for myself, I managed to strike down a couple of enemy horsemen, one with my scimitar, the other with the mallet. When it was all over, I realized that one of my haramis perished, even though I specifically asked him not to do it. Guess he had too many sins to atone for, and chose martyrdom instead of loyal service. The spoils of war weren't that special, but at least I managed to make a lord feel vulnerable. If I were the one to capture him instead of the merc, he would have lost his head, but this is acceptable too. I then returned to Seordas to continue raiding it, but I was chased off by another Imperial noble, who eventually caught the mercenary I helped a few days prior and managed to dismantle his warband. When I was in the clear, I attempted to plunder this village a few more times, but every single time, a larger party showed up and forced me to flee, so in the end, I just gave up. So we made our way to another village to sell our ill-gotten grains and then realized it's been 94 days since our journey began and we needed to accomplish something truly remarkable to inspire the troops before we close this chapter of Astrid's life. And so, the gang made its way into Battania looking for a worthy challenge, and not long after, we spotted a caravan defended by 39 mercenaries. We chased it for a bit, but we soon realized that 39 are too many for my 21 to handle, so we abandoned the chase. Moments later, we spotted a Battanian convoy with only 30 defenders, which awakened a painful memory in Astrid's mind, as she was reminded by her father's caravan. Still, this is her life now, and if she wants it to be good, then she's gotta make other people's lives difficult, even non-existent in some cases. But nobody's shown her any mercy, so why should she? When we caught the traitors, the painful memories stopped because these weren't Battanians like her father. They were Imperials from the city of Epicrotea, but they bear the Battanian flag ever since their town was conquered by Caladog. Even so, Astrid was having second thoughts, so she's decided to sell most of the gang's possessions to the traveling merchants, earning us 2,400 dinars in the process, and she was going to stop at this. But when the transaction was concluded, she glanced over at her men and noticed they're itching for a fight. So this is out of her control now. Still, she did make one last-ditch effort to avoid unnecessary bloodshed, when she told the caravan master that famous saying, "Your money or your life." It is often said that the love for money is the root of all evil, and since the merchants love their money more than their lives, we are now forced to commit evil acts upon them. Dune Raiders, you know what to do. Wait, actually you don't, because this is our first caravan raid. Fear not, I will lead us to fortune. When the battle began, the defenders sent rangers to harass us, so me and my riders charged forth and I claimed my first kill. Then they attempted to flank us, so they rode uphill and then downhill into a pit. which I could use to minimize my casualties. If we corral the enemy horsemen in here, we could take them out before their archers can provide fire support. Initially, our foes were stuck in here with just me and my cavalry, and we did pretty good until Astrid got reminded of her mortality as a crossbow bolt pierced her flesh. The shooter paid for that in blood. But Astrid noticed she was getting surrounded and fought hard to escape the mosh pit that was forming all around her. When she could breathe free once more, she realized that our horse archers weren't contributing to the violence, so I ordered them to enter the pit and rain arrows upon the enemy while our assault units tore them to shreds. In the meantime, I killed one more enemy combatant and gave another one a non-lethal brain injury, but also got wounded in the process. I then attempted to make quick work of another caravan guard and proceeded to duel him for what felt like an eternity. Both of us relentlessly took jabs at each other, both of us blocked every strike. Almost every strike. I did score some hits, but even then, it wasn't enough to pierce his armor, and I had to wait for one of my men to come by and stab him in the back. By this point, most of the enemy's cavalry has been ravaged, and the only ones left were the armed traders. Good offense, poor defense. We capitalized on our only advantage and simply charged at them to rob them of the chance to shoot us with their longbows. Well, I left that to my men because I was stuck dueling another guardsman who stubbornly blocked all of my attacks. Luckily for me, he was too distracted and didn't pay attention to one of my lads coming from behind. Not much happened after that. The remaining enemies were scattered, dazed and confused. Not much of a threat. All we needed to do was clean up the battlefield so that we can get looting, but I couldn't let my men do all the work. So I put my arsenal to good use and freely dispensed some head trauma. I then dueled another enemy rider who, unlike his predecessors, refused to use protection, and after just a couple of thrusts, he already passed out from exhaustion. What a two-pump chump. Soon after, the last surviving armed trader fell to my blade and he wasn't surviving anymore. I also rushed forth to strike down the last man standing, but my lads got him before I could, and so we were victorious. That was a fierce fight, and I was expecting to suffer great losses, but when the dust settled, I was relieved to learn that out of the 6 cultists who have fallen, only one of them lost his life. May this marauder rest in peace. I never asked him for his name. But his sacrifice wasn't in vain. This raid earned us more wealth than we've seen in the last month. Expensive gear, horses, livestock, trade goods, and enough food to last us a year. And on top of that, this success inspired one of our captive marauders to join up and take the place of the man we've lost in the attack. But we were 3 days short of 100, which means we still have some stuff to do. My primary goal was to keep expanding the gang, so I was headed into the mountains of Vlandia, looking for hill tribes to recruit, but along the way, I rounded up 2 parties of villagers. They were practically begging to be robbed. The first group gave us 90 sacks of grain and some animals, while the second only gave us 4 work horses and a few coins. I then caught a Vlandian trade convoy and convinced them to give me all their gold by selling my plunder, not stealing from them. I'll try to play it fair from now on. If a caravan is willing to buy my stolen goods, I'll let them pass, and if I want to attack them, I won't sell them my loot. If I do both things too often, I might run out of people who are willing to purchase my stuff, and I don't want to tarnish my reputation any further. I may be a criminal, but professionals have standards. After that, Astrid continued her journey into the mountains of Vlandia, and along the way, she has spotted some sea raiders just standing there, menacingly. We might be able to beat them, but they clearly know something we don't, so I just kept my distance. We also discovered a couple of hideouts which will most likely raid at some point in the future, but for the time being, I just attacked a few small gangs that crossed my path, adopting the survivors of those massacres into my family. But then, we ran into a warband just like ours, with a little over 20 members, and it was time to see which one was stronger. The surviving losers will eventually join the winners. To ensure our victory with as few casualties as possible, I ordered the cavalry to form a shield wall in front of the skirmishers while the enemy gets peppered with projectiles. Most of these poor bastards don't even have clothes, let alone shields, so their fates are sealed. I didn't want to waste time with them, so after injuring one, I focused on the highwaymen. The first one was dispatched with a single, masterful thrust of my spear, but the other dueled me for what felt like an eternity. The first stab dealt heavy damage and knocked him off his horse, but after that, he fought like a cornered animal, which, for all intents and purposes, he is, because my lads have already killed or injured most of his boys. For a long time, we took jabs at each other, but mostly missed, although I did get lucky at some point and stabbed him in the gut, but the beast was still standing. As my men ran out of targets, they began shooting at him, and after getting an arrow in the back, I was expecting him to keel over. Nope. This was the first time in my life I've witnessed true berserker rage. The highwayman was literally too angry to die, and this earned my respect. So I ordered my men to stand down and evacuate the battlefield, then descended from the saddle, planning to give this warrior a proper duel. Sensing the opportunity to land an easy hit, the bastard pricked me a little, but I was in a far better condition than he was. I then pulled out my mallet because I need this monster into my gang. We then traded blows for a short while, but he blocked most of my attacks, until his battle trance ended. He lost focus and got punched in the mouth with a shield, which reminded me of my very first fight. At the end of it, we only lost one guy, a highwayman, but we captured 2 highwaymen and 5 other future highwaymen, if we can find horses to give them. Actually got one of those from their recently defeated gang, alongside a lot of good stuff, including my very first ranged weapon. A bag of lowland javelins, best used when you have the high ground. And that's how day 100 ended for our dear bandit queen, Astrid. Long may she live. In the first day, she had literally nothing. Now, she's got weapons, armor, a loyal steed, and a devout cult of 21 raiders with another 18 prospects on the way. And her newly acquired ranged weapons will allow her to make short work of any villagers unlucky enough to run into her crew. On top of all of that, she's also put together enough resources to maintain her warband for years to come. 25,000 dinars and a ton of food that would put entire villages to shame. I'd say she's done a pretty good job for a woman. In fact, she's done a far better job than the other ones who've attempted this challenge, Ukzug the Ugly or Balon Blacktide. If you would like to see how those two fared, their stories are linked down below. The first one is a 50-minute video made almost 3 years ago, and the second is actually an entire series that follows the journey of an Ironborn raider from rags to riches. If you haven't already, you should probably watch those until I get an idea for my next video. I hope you've enjoyed Astrid's little story. Maybe we'll see her again in another challenge. Until then, I'll be exploring other ideas. There's a few tutorials I would like to make. Those will require a lot of testing and streaming, which I'll be doing on the second channel. Subscribe if you want to catch me live. But that's enough chit chat from me today. Thank you lads for watching, and I better see you in my next projects. Goodbye.